The real reason why the James Webb Telescope needs to cool down. The James Webb Telescope found its way into orbit earlier this year, and almost as soon as it had gotten there, it began to show us some pretty clear images of some celestial bodies. Webb captured the first set of images after spending close to 2 weeks in space. All seems to be going well, but why is there a call for the telescope to cool down? Hit the like button and stay through to the end of this video. Welcome to your favorite channel, Unlimited SpaceX. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell for more exciting news about SpaceX projects and Elon Musk's many controversies. While man cannot afford to venture too far from the Earth's orbit at the moment, all we can do is explore our surrounding environment. The James Webb Telescope is built to observe some of the most distant planetary bodies and magnify them to a specific extent. But if it works for a long time, will it burn out? The James Webb Telescope was designed with a peculiar build with 2 mirrors and a near-infrared camera, which picks up almost anything it is targeted at. In the little time that it's been used in the observatory, it has managed to pick up the presence of about 18 white dots that could only be stars. The stars in question were thought to be Ursa Major stars. It's a telescope designed to capture any sighting of previously unidentified objects that would give us a clue of how the universe works. It would also be our eyes to help us figure out any possible changes to the universe, and maybe it would help us understand its origins. The primary activity of the James Webb Telescope has been to set it in a proper alignment for its primary objective. And to see that it does what it's expected, the telescope's operators have reportedly used it to observe about 156 positions that were thought to be the correct position of the Ursa Major star. The telescope is able to identify the star despite it being assumed 260 light-years away from our solar system. The telescope captured over 1,500 images intermittently, and when observers put the images together, it created a bit of a fuzzy image. The most relatable way we can describe the appearance of the combined images is that of a person's eyes that seem to be looking in multiple directions, and it represents double vision. The James Webb Observatory Telescope is a consequence of the decision of NASA to create a long-term observatory in space. A successful launch into space has many pros and cons, and while it may be generally expensive to launch into space, it also presents a lot more challenges. Hence, rocket designers and scientists put in considerable time to avoid any catastrophe, given how unpredictable things can get. Building a grounded observatory seems like a good idea, but it would offer a relatively low space coverage instead of launching an observatory platform into space. An observatory installed on the ground may observe some challenges, especially given the variations in weather conditions. Also, the changes between day and night tend to affect the vision of even the most powerful telescope on Earth. The James Webb Telescope fears some competition from the more epic Hubble Space Telescope. The telescope is currently the major space observatory that we have in space. But that was some time ago before the James Webb Space Telescope came out and completely outclassed the Hubble. James Webb can generate enough temperature, light, and wavelength of radioactive materials. The James Webb Space Telescope is most likely going to open up new channels for exploring knowledge in several scientific circles. But the Hubble has a great advantage over the James Webb. The Hubble, however, is more durable than the James Webb. The feats of the Hubble telescope are quite an arduous task, after it had spent 31 years in space. How long do you think the James Webb Telescope will be able to persist in space? We don't know, but scientists have surmised that it may barely last up to 10 years in space. The Hubble has been active since 1990, and it was one of the highlights of the renewed push for space technology and astronomy. Before the launch of the Hubble, the significant observatory activity was basically on the ground, and we were content with using our cutting-edge lenses and optical telescopes to try to observe what was going on in our solar system and outside it. All was sweet and rosy until there was a need to overcome the challenges that our climatic condition often predicted. It means that constant weather changes impaired the performance of the telescope. It was also challenging to watch the stars from any telescope at a higher altitude. It felt as if we were trying to watch space from beneath the ocean. The atmosphere was always the bad guy concerning the powerful telescope's failure to capture the images it was designed to do thoroughly. The Hubble was the last piece of an old-time space observatory, whereas the James Webb Telescope shows us the way forward with its advanced technology and instruments. It would offer us a clearer perspective of the universe, and we can patiently wait for the universe to unravel itself. It has been over a month since it was launched, and the world has been all over it to see how it works in space. It had been through a series of maneuvers to avoid crashing into objects in low orbit as the observatory began to align itself. The lengthened period of maneuvers was the reason for the suggestion that it needs to cool down before a full observation launch begins. It would seem normal for a space rocket or telescope to get a bit warmed up, but since it requires cooling down, this is where it gets tricky. The fact is that the temperature technically has to be at the cryogenic level. Otherwise, its near-infrared system will fail to work as it should. Hence, the imperative is that the telescope will snooze off a bit before it's set to work for the long term. The cooling down has already begun, and very soon, its infrared system might be ready to fire on all cylinders. What's the time frame for which it's expected to cool down? To be sure, it would take a few weeks to give or take. The cooling down process would require escaping exposure to the sun, which would rapidly spike its temperature with its intense radiation. The telescope has an impressive sun shield around its body to protect it from direct sunlight. But the sun shield had to be activated from the ground, which kick-started the cooling process. But we're all aware of heat transfer physics. Heat energy doesn't just disappear. It must be transferred, absorbed, or converted into another form of usable energy. Hence, one of the challenges is how to get the telescope to shed the heat energy. Since heat cannot be lost by conduction and convection, things seem pretty tricky because space is pretty much a vacuum. So what other option is available to the Webb telescope? That would be heat dissipation. The radiation process naturally involves the release of heat energy in small pockets of infrared light. The whole idea gets tricky, especially since Webb is supposed to receive information by gathering infrared light given off by its target. Hence, there's a chance that it could experience some pretty weird calculations, especially since it would receive extra infrared light that dissipates. The telescope has to reduce its temperature to about 266 degrees Celsius to function at peak conditions. The extra benefit is that one of the mirrors is attached to a cryogenic cooler that contains liquid helium. Other telescope designs have this kind of cryogenic cooler, but Webb has an extra advantage in reusing its liquid helium. Hence, it offers the good news that the telescope may be able to overcome the risks we previously identified with the release of heat, and it would start work earnestly. The developers are proud of the excellent work they did to prepare the telescope for this kind of eventuality, and despite the successes they've seen already, they still believe that it could do so much more, and so do we. We might have finally found the best alternative to the old Hubble telescope. What do you think about the latest development in the mission of the James Webb Telescope? We hope you enjoyed watching this video. Don't forget to smash the like and subscribe buttons. Goodbye and stay safe. Thank you for watching.